said, I'm finna come over there and whoop your ass. Don't make me repeat myself, bitch. Don't make me come put my foot up your booty hole. That's what she said. That's what I heard. That's what y'all heard, because that's what I heard. What up, Ho Biscuits? It's your girl Skitten, back at it again. First and foremost, I hope you guys are doing well. I hope you guys are staying safe and sanitized. If you guys haven't already heard, but I know you guys have already heard because my Ho Biscuits are in the know, okay? They've got their finger on the pulse of internet culture. Salmonella is back, baby. He recently released a video. I want to say it was like last Tuesday or Wednesday, and Chavez and I literally released the video like 2 days later. It was supposed to be a day later, but we were having issues with our internet, and I'm sorry, okay? For those of you who are like, it's about time, I'm sorry, okay? There was a weakness in my Cox. Cox is an internet provider, for those of you who don't know. Anyway, if you guys haven't already checked out that reaction, make sure you head over to my husband's channel. We also released our reaction to Internet Historian's Man in Cave. Spoiler alert, I cry. I cry a lot. I don't know how much of my crying my husband edited out or left in, but there are tears. There are tears shed. That shit was intense. Also upcoming on my husband's channel is a new CJ the Champ video, so keep your eyes peeled for that. We've been real busy for y'all, so be prepared for an influx, an inundation, if you will, of content, okay? Make sure that you guys, if you're not subscribed and with notifications on, make sure you fix that, okay? Fix all of that. And today we are here to watch Joan of Arc, the Maid of Orleans from Extra Credits, Extra History. This is episode 3, so if you haven't checked out the other 2, make sure you guys go ahead and do that as well. I'm excited to see what this video has in store for us, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started.
Letter from Joan of Arc, March 22nd, 1429.
Okay.
King of England. Render unto the maid here sent by God the keys of all the good towns which you have taken and violated in France. And you, archers, companions of war, men-at-arms before Orleans, go away to your country by God. And if you do not, expect news of the maid who will come to see you shortly, to your very great injury.
Goddamn,
King of England,
bitch.
if you do not do so, I am a chieftain of war. And in whatever place I find your people in France, I will make them flee. And if they will not obey, I will have them slain.
Oh, she said, I'm finna come over there and whoop your ass. Don't make me repeat myself, bitch. Don't make me come put my foot up your booty hole. That's what she said. That's what I heard. That's what y'all heard, because that's what I heard.
Ooh, Zoe, you feel that? I'm getting tingles. It was a strange procession that came to relieve the besieged city of Orleans. At the front were not troops, but priests singing hymns and carrying banners. Then came the soldiers, and more numerous than either were the carts full of supplies. And leading them was Joan, dressed in plate armor, astride a white horse. Her pages and squires rode behind, carrying her new banner. It was a column of the devoted. The forces who saw her, Armagnac in the city and English and Burgundian outside, were all exhausted. At the beginning of the siege, the Armagnacs had centered their defenses around the south bank of the Loire, where a quarter-mile bridge, the only way to cross the river, was anchored by a gatehouse. But the English had taken that gatehouse in an assault, forcing the Armagnacs to blow the bridge and cut the city off.
Damn.
The English responded by making the gatehouse their headquarters and building a number of earthen forts around Orleans. This meant that the city was surrounded, but supplies could still slip through if they were swift and protected.
Got it.
Joan's party was armed, and before the English could sally out, they'd reached the bank of the Loire, where ferries could carry them into the city. But there was a problem. When they boarded, the wind wasn't right. The troops and supplies couldn't get across. In fact, now they were vulnerable. If they remained pinned to the bank, the English could marshal forces to wipe them out. Then the wind changed. Upon her arrival, jubilation filled Orléans. As Joan rode through the narrow streets, throngs reached out to touch her, hoping for a blessing. These people had heard of this maid, the one prophesied to save France, the one who had brought them food.
Most importantly, the one who brought them food. Like, yeah, you're the chosen one. There's a prophecy about you. Bitch, you got bread and cheese. Yeah, I fuck with you for life.
The one God had sent to them on a miraculous wind. She took quarters in a house set aside for her and received a welcome from the city's commanders. And that's when Joan found out that not all was as she expected it to be.
Because?
Her visions had told her to lead the Armagnac army.
Right.
But these military men weren't interested in taking orders from a teenage girl.
Annoying as hell.
They welcomed her supplies, sure. And the morale boost she brought was amazing. They invited her to councils of war, where they explained the tactical subtleties of siege warfare. And they even conceded that maybe she was on a mission from God.
Right.
But sieges, they explained, were won by tons of supplies, artillery angles, and precise strategic planning. Success came in months, not days. They would wear down one earthwork, then the next, they told her. Joan, however, had developed an alternative strategy.
Go whoop their
an intricate
ass.
plan to dislodge the English from their positions. It went like this. And follow me closely for a minute, because this gets a little bit complicated and into the weeds of siege warfare.
Okay, I'm ready.
But her plan was, get them. Like full frontal attack, right now, on the strongest position. Huh? After all, God was with them.
That's what I said, bro. Go whoop their ass. I didn't come to play with you. I didn't come to fucking strategize. I came here to kick ass and take names, and I'm all out of pens and paper, bitch.
And would reward their faith with victory. Upon hearing this plan, the commanders weren't so
They're like,
keen.
bitch, what are you talking about?
They didn't want to waste lives and supplies on an attack that, even if successful, might damage the garrison in the long term. Plus, if it failed, they'd squander the high morale drummed up by Joan's arrival. Their plan was to go a little more of the Captain America route, using Joan as a mascot, sending her out to distribute food and soldiers' pay. Not to, like, put her in a place where she might get her head shot off with a cannon. Which, side note, was a very real threat. The previous English commander had died from just such a lucky shot.
Damn.
But Joan was not about to be some lucky charm.
Foot.
She did the meet and greet duties, but also slipped outside the walls and observed enemy positions. During one outing, she walked to the edge of the destroyed bridge and called the English to surrender.
Just bold as hell.
Their commander responded with a rain of insults, calling her a witch, a coward, and saying that the French had taken her from a brothel and put her in armor.
Not you called me a whore when I am a chosen maiden of the Lord.
Later regret those insults. But Joan's activities also won over the citizens of Orléans, because unlike the city commanders, Joan was fresh. She promised a quick victory, and she did things like ride out to escort new trains of supplies into the city. And as a result, support for Joan grew. When she rode into the streets, she could barely move due to the crowds. And on one occasion, a mob broke down the door to her house, desperate to see and touch her.
Oh my God, y'all
Within
chill.
days, it was clear to the commanders that some kind of action was needed to relieve the pressure. So, they picked an easy target, a less defended earthwork, but also didn't tell Joan, fearing she'd rush to the battle line.
Smart.
And yeah, they were right. Upon being woken and told of the attack, Joan strapped on her
said y'all
armor
stole
and
my
rushed to
fucking
join the
idea
troops.
and then did it
Not to
without
fight,
me?
but to inspire. She carried her banner, displaying herself, urging them on. And they won. Hours of hard fighting gave the Armagnac defenders their first victory in months. Faith in the Holy Maid soared even higher. The populace sensed imminent liberation. But while the townsmen and soldiers celebrated, Joan turned inward. She'd preached holy warfare and the defeat of the English, but she'd never until now witnessed combat up close.
Yeah, that's rough.
It was awful. A far cry from the glorious victory she'd imagined.
That's always how I feel, though, about people who talk about, like, war and fighting and battle, but have never been in, like, people are dying out there. People are losing limbs out there. None of this shit is glorious. None of this shit is fun. Like, that's a pretty common trope in stories about warfare. It's like how horrified everyone who comes back is. Like, I don't know what y'all thought PTSD was in veterans, but like, that's what it is.
This was sadness, though, not doubt. God's will was not to be questioned.
Of course.
So the next day, with the fighting suspended due to a religious feast, she presented a revamped plan. Get 'em! Not the small fort this time.
Right.
The biggest,
Don't be pussy
baddest
this
English
time.
bastion on the north bank. The one with the most men. Again, the commanders compromised. They would cross the river on pontoon bridges and attack the weaker forts on the south bank, taking the earthworks in front of the bridge. Then that done, they would attack
Joan
the
is
gatehouse.
just like, I said what
Now,
I said,
was that
bitch.
get 'em enough for Joan?
Of course not.
It was.
Oh, okay.
The next day, the army marshaled at the city gates when they noticed that their numbers were larger than usual. The citizens of Orleans had flocked to Joan, organizing militias to fight for their maid.
Wow.
The commanders tried to get them to leave, but she insisted that they come. Joan's second day of battle was hard. The English had abandoned their outer works to concentrate forces in front of the gatehouse. She led the first attack personally, before the Armagnac forces were fully across the river, and was beaten back. The English pursued, only checked when Joan turned and bellowed for them to stop in the name of God. Context fairy, don't think I don't see you. We're just having a little fun. And then, it was a grinding, earthwork by earthwork battle. Joan led the assault, waving her banner and urging the troops on.
But not swinging
She
the
limped,
sword.
1 foot pierced by an English caltrop.
Oof.
It was bloody. But by nightfall, the Armagnacs held the earthworks around the
Nice.
gatehouse. The next day, they closed in. Citizens repaired the bridge to hit the gatehouse from 2 sides. Cannons bombarded the thick stonework. They even sent burning boats in a fruitless attempt to burn the English out. But none of it worked. And as it neared dark, the commanders decided to starve the gatehouse into submission. Joan heard this and grabbed a ladder. Because it was time to, and say it with me now.
Get 'em!
She ran toward the last earthwork. Soldiers snatched up scaling ladders and followed her. They would take it by escalade, one of the most dangerous operations in medieval warfare, climbing ladders face first into the blades and missiles of the enemy.
She said, we not doing none of this play shit, okay? We are out here to win. Kill him.
Joan threw herself into a ditch, passed off the ladder, and took her banner, yelling that God was with them. An arrow slammed into the gap between her helmet and breastplate and buried itself deep in her shoulder. She toppled, carried off the battlefield by her pages. The English jeered that they'd slain the witch, and the attack stalled, men dying in the ditch as they tried to climb their way into English arrows. Rumors of the maid's death were rampant. And then, from behind the French ranks, a white banner rose. Joan stalked back toward the embankment, clad in battered armor. Each step would have been agony. It had only been a flesh wound, but doctors would have had to pull the arrow through her shoulder in order to dislodge it. She insisted on rejoining the attack. Seeing their maid arisen, seemingly unwounded, the French rallied and scaled the final earthwork. English and Burgundian soldiers evacuated to the gatehouse, swarming across the drawbridge in such numbers that the timbers snapped, dropping a handful of men into the Loire River. Among the drowned was the English captain who'd cursed Joan only a few days before.
Because God don't like ugly, bitch.
They'd take the gatehouse by nightfall.
Nice.
The next day, Joan drew up her army on the north bank, in front of the English forts there. And to be clear, it was her army now.
Yeah.
Sure, other men might command it, but these soldiers fought for her, for this strange holy maid who'd bled with them in battle. She didn't order an attack. The sight of her force was enough to get the English to withdraw. Joan had done what the voices commanded. In 4 days of battle, she'd ended a siege that had dragged on for 6 months.
Just like she
She had her
told
miracle,
you.
and none doubted her mission or her power. She saved the Dauphins and opened the door to northern France. And for her next trick, she would give the Dauphins a crown.
Yes. Whew. I'm enjoying this series so much. I think I've touched on before that like stories like this don't really get taught in American history classes, and especially if you're homeschooled like I was, like we don't cover all this shit. So this is all new, brand new information for me. So I am having a fantastic time with this series. I hope you guys are also enjoying it. Don't forget to leave your reaction requests and recommendations down in the comments below. And other than that, peace out, Hope Biscuits. It's Skittin' Lit.